Hey, I thought I would show you a book that I think would be great to add to your collection. I'm hoping to do several videos that I can show you different books that I've purchased over the years that you can still buy. Some of them will be new, some will be used, but I think buying photo books can be daunting because depending on where you live, you can't see the book, you can't thumb through the book, you don't know what you're going to get. And definitely I've bought books even recently that I saw pictures from the books and I thought they might be great books, and they've even been on short lists for Aperture and different things, and then I got the book and I was really disappointed. So I'm hoping that by showing you some books that I think are worth buying, that you can add some nice books to your collection without having to experiment or buying an expensive book and it not being what you expected. So the book that I want to show you today is a new book by Robert Lyons, and it was made by Zatara Press. This book is a soft cover. We'll talk a little bit about materials, but it's a soft cover with kind of like a wrap here. It's called Zero Boundary or Zero Line Boundary, and it's about the Canadian border, the U.S.-Canadian border, which is, I think, according to the text, the longest continuous border in the world that is unguarded for the most part. Robert was one of my teachers in graduate school, and so I've known him for quite some time. A big fan of his work. And so I was really excited to get this book. He's been working on it for a while. Some immediate things, I love that he's just embraced doing a softcover. You don't see as many softcover books in the wild as I wish that you would. I think it's a nice format. It makes the book more affordable. It also, depending on the materials that you use, can make it really approachable. This book feels wonderful in the hand. Okay, so let's just get into it and look at this book a little bit. So what we're going to see here are a lot of very quiet black and white images made on the U.S.-Canadian border. It's not overt. It's not inherently obvious that that's where we are in space. And I think that serves the work. It kind of makes this sometimes very mundane and normal space. Nice little detail of a car right here. Pretty sure that is a Volkswagen of some sort, so that means that that's Robert's car. This guy, what a fantastic portrait. He's on some sort of a scooter. The size of his hands, especially his left hand, is quite large. You can see scars where he's probably had surgeries. He's holding a coffee cup or something here in this kind of bag. And so I'm assuming this is someone that frequents this area quite a bit. And then we have several of these type of inversions where it's kind of like a positive with a negative within it. I haven't really spent enough time with the book to have kind of a good or bad feeling about these images. I tend to be a very traditional photographer, and so manipulations are less interesting to me most of the time, but also it's for an intended purpose. So an important thing with reading photo books is not necessarily always do I like or not like this decision. You first have to consider, why was this decision made? What's the importance of it stopping me in my tracks and seeing it in this way? And that's an important thing when you're working through a photo book. The author has been really intentional about what he or she is showing you. And so taking the time and doing your due diligence to try to understand what's going on, or at least ask yourself some questions. I think, photo books work best when they ask things of us and not tell us things. And again, like this, you could have made this body of work in a lot of different ways. You could have been really overt at being very obvious that you're looking at a border crossing, but really there's just these subtle little hints that you're seeing, and no fence, no wall. Kind of interesting that there's not one in this particular border, yet to the south which is what we hear so much about, there's always some crisis. Again, we get to another one of these inversion, where it looks like there's a negative cut out of the positive. Another really beautiful portrait, this young girl, and I'm assuming her mother. That's one thing that I've observed over Robert's work, and hopefully we'll look at more of his books as time goes on. The way that he interacts with people with a camera is really fascinating. And the really subtle, quiet gestures that are captured in a lot of his pictures of people, I find quite beautiful and captivating. We can speak a little bit more about the materiality of the book. I find the paper thickness is fairly thick. It gives you a substantial feeling in the hand. I think they've chosen the exact right thickness and weight of the paper. Too thin of a weight, and the book can feel kind of cheap or light. And if you want that, if that serves the work, then that's good. But if it doesn't serve the work, then it might just feel cheap. These feel like you're looking at almost like individual prints, which I really, really like, especially for a soft cover book where you have a little. It's easier for the book to drape with the soft cover, so you can sometimes get away with a little thicker paper, or at least it's been my experience. Okay, there's some writing here. I'm not going to read that to you. You can use that do that at your leisure. This is an image I think that's been publicized a bit from the book. I got an early copy of the book. I actually pre-ordered the book and received a print of this image, which is really nice, and that's going to go up on my wall. Photobooks, I think, are really important because it's an experience with the work, an in-depth experience with the work, and you can see the work with a lot of intentional, with a great intentionality because of what the author has done. I love gallery showings and I love printed materials, but the thing about gallery showings is if you aren't there for the show, then you don't get to experience the work in the way that it's meant to be experienced in that context. And so having a book, it's always with you. You can always experience that body of work again, and take it with you. I think about a photo book as like an experience that you put in your backpack, and I'm always going to be I think a strong supporter of sharing and showing a body of work in this format, because I think it is a really powerful format and it has longevity, unlike a gallery showing or unlike any sort of digital way of showing work. There's almost no longevity there in a digital space. We do have some observation here. And I guess it's important to say that this is not a review necessarily. This is not in depth. I don't want to overly explain the work. I think that does a lot of work a great disservice. And I teach at a university, and so explaining things is part of my job. Man, some of these compositions are really beautiful. But with photography, it works best, again, when it asks things of us. If we overly explain the work, it kind of kills it. It's like going to a magic show and having all the tricks explained to you after the fact. I just don't find that is an enjoyable experience at all. And photography is really bad at telling us a lot of things, and that's what makes it a great tool for storytelling, is that there's so much room there for invitation to invite us into the story, for us to try to understand what we're seeing, for us to unravel the mystery that's happening. That's, this is great. This is a cloud kind of hovering, mirroring here. Okay, so, I love this work. I think it's a quiet, fascinating way to talk about border security and immigration and, when we decide to let some people in and when we don't decide to let other people into the country. There's a great little explanation here just about the length of the Canadian and U.S. border and how we talk so much about undocumented immigrants and people being illegal and these different things while we have, invisible borders and asking the viewer to consider, like, what is a border, what is nationhood, what does all this look like? If I were to say, if you wanted to add a book to your collection, I think this would be a great addition. This book just came out I just received my copy a few weeks ago, I think in February of 2023. And so I would say if you are inclined, this would be a great addition to your collection. I think it's a fairly small run and it's a really affordable book, which is two things that you don't hear very often. This is an edition of 300. The printing is beautiful. It's lovely. I'll try to include a link of a place that you can get this. And my last thing that I want to just encourage you is that when you're buying photo books and when you're collecting photo books, if you're buying new books, please buy from actual bookstores and not something like Amazon, or buy directly from the publisher. That's also a great thing to do, especially for a small publisher like this. There's a lot of money invested in these objects, and if we want things like this to exist, then we need to invest in infrastructure that provides this. So photo book stores, my favorite one is Baltimore Photo Space. So I would say if you're going to buy a book, check out Baltimore Photo Space. Those folks over there are great. They have a really cool selection of books for such a intimate small group. And then also for these smaller publishers, you can always buy directly from the publisher. And this is again from Zatara Press, and I'll have a link where you can find this book. But those are good options. Hopefully in the future we'll look at some used books, because I think that, you don't just always have to buy new books. Some of my favorite books I bought secondhand that aren't necessarily collectible, but they're still treasures on my shelf, and I'll never get rid of those books. So we'll talk about maybe some used bookstores in the future. So I hope this was helpful. I love this work, and I hope that you like it too. And if you have any questions about it, I'll do my best to answer them. And if not, hope you're having a great day.